how did you know that this was peaking out? Did you have some crazy moment where you knew it was peaking out, where people were like just offering you sick amounts of money without doing diligence? Or
I will say one very, very, big time investor, offered a multi-$100 million round on the spot, as I was pitching them. Again, who knows if it would have come through.
In the room. Getting offered a couple of $100 million in the room during the presentation.
Yeah.
That is peak.
This Week in Startups is brought to you by Lemon.io. Get access to Lemon Hire, a platform with more than 80,000 pre-vetted engineers that you can interview within 48 hours. Get $2,000 off your first hire at lemon.io/hire today. InTouchCX. Give your startup a boost and simplify your processes with next-level automated customer support solutions from InTouchCX. Discover your custom strategy at intouchcx.com/twist. And Northwest Registered Agent. When starting your business, it's important to use a service that will actually help you. Northwest Registered Agent is that service. They'll form your company fast, give you the documents you need to open a business bank account, and even provide you with mail scanning and a business address to keep your personal privacy intact. Visit northwestregisteredagent.com/twist to get a 60% discount on your next LLC.
All right, everybody, I'm really excited to have our next guest on the program. He hasn't been here for 5 years. Last time Howie Liu was on This Week in Startups was in April of 2018. Here we are in 2023. My God, so much has changed. Last time you were on, Howie, it was pre-pandemic, and you just done your Series B for Airtable. Everybody loves Airtable. Welcome back to the program. For the audience who doesn't know what Airtable is and your inspiration for creating it, please explain in the simplest terms possible what Airtable is.
Yeah, so Airtable is basically like a Lego kit to build really useful business apps. I worked at Salesforce briefly, saw the power of their platform and how configurable it was, and basically left to start Airtable as this really, really elegant, intuitive way to build, a large class of business apps, initially with a kind of direct to end user PLG model, and now increasingly with more of an enterprise focus going after bigger, meatier use cases. But it's still the same concept, the same vision of we want to empower every company, every line of business, even every person who wants to go out and build a really useful business app to do it with the best possible Lego kit.
Got it. And you mentioned the acronym PLG, Product-Led Growth. Why don't we explain to the audience, since a lot of founders are now saying, hey, our success comes from this philosophy, when you first became aware of it and how you kind of incorporate PLG into your process at Airtable.
Yeah. So, I can tell you when it wasn't a thing, which was when we started out, founding the company and going out and raising our initial seed round. I remember getting so many investors saying, love the concept, love the platform concept. Maybe even like you as a potential founder, but this whole idea of build an awesome product. It's going to get traction on its own. You're going to grow, at least initially, through organic virality. That just doesn't exist. Maybe Dropbox did it. This was actually before Slack had launched, so Slack wasn't even yet a case study. But really, maybe Dropbox kind of did it, Evernote to some extent. But there's no really good comps for a company that's grown primarily on the backs of a beloved product. And so, if you want to get serious, you got to go and figure out an enterprise sales motion from day one, right? And in some sense, I'll come full circle to this, but I'm sure we'll explore this topic. They weren't entirely wrong, but also, what I think they missed and what we then saw over the past 10 years really happen is, bottoms up adoption really did kind of hit the mainstream. And obviously we've seen now a bunch of SaaS companies, start that way. In fact, maybe it's more of the default way to start a SaaS product these days versus build up like a direct sales motion from day one.
And that bottom up is, hey, there's some hero in the organization who's tech savvy, who likes to GSD, get stuff done. You use another word for S if you like, but they like to GSD. And so they come to work and they're like, hey, I got this little secret thing here. We got this problem. Boom, I'm going to solve it over the weekend. You got that hero champion inside the org, and then they spread your product. And we used to call this word of mouth, but it's slightly different than that because you do have this like person who's evangelizing, I guess is the term we used to use back in the 90s. This evangelist is out there, telling everybody this is the greatest thing ever. What was the tip of the spear for Airtable? Because when I first saw it, I thought, oh, it's a spreadsheet. This is like this weird like database spreadsheet, because people would open up spreadsheets and they would use them as databases. They would use a spreadsheet as a CRM. It was that kind of the start of this, was like the Swiss Army knife spreadsheet of Excel that everybody used a different way, but it didn't really have the tools or the ease of use and the templating, and that inspired you?
Yeah, so I think what I saw was this big gap between, spreadsheets, like you said, are very widely used for everything, right? Like they're not just used for number crunching, which is really what they were designed for initially, like going all the way back to like VisiCalc, Lotus 123, like, the spreadsheet was really designed as a numerical, analysis, like a number crunching tool, right? I mean, literally for accountants or finance people. And I think what they've become, because there's nothing else out there that's as easy to use or build on, is the default way to make a really lightweight app. It could be like inventory tracking for a small business. It could be your makeshift CRM. It could be, here's how you actually manage production workflows at a media company. But it gets used for everything. And, in contrast, like, on the other extreme, if you want to actually go and build or use a purpose-built app, it's very, very complex or brittle, right? So you find like, here's one very specific point solution that does this specific thing, right? Or, if you want to go and build your own, it's obviously very laborious, and then you have to kind of maintain it, evolve it, et cetera. And so what we saw was this big, big chasm in between those two extremes. And we wanted Airtable to have as frictionless an entry point as a spreadsheet. So it was a very explicit design principle to make Airtable feel like a spreadsheet. So, the motto internally was like, make it no harder to use than a traditional spreadsheet, but immediately add much, much more value if what you're doing is not number crunching, but you're trying to build an app, right? You have data in there, you want to build a workflow around it. Like, we can do a lot better of a job by picking off those use cases.
So I was going to have you on the show because we had mentioned, or I think it was Sachs, we were talking on All In about the state of the company.
Yeah.
And, it's been like a rough time the last 2 years. And I guess there was some sort of tweet storm that we referenced, but you emailed me and said, hey, J-How, and you also emailed Sachs, hey, that tweet storm wasn't correct. It had a lot of weird data in it. And we were like, oh, yeah, our bad. And we want to correct that. We corrected it at the top of the show, I think, the next episode or the episode after.
For sure.
Explain to me what that tweet storm was, how it got out there, and then how you went about correcting it. Because this is kind of a new phenomenon. There are these like anonymous accounts or quasi-business accounts. Sometimes they call them the thread guys on Twitter /X. And they're kind of getting clout by kind of telling stories in tweets, which is kind of cool. Sometimes you call them the reply guys, right? And so somebody did that, but they used your company as like the format. And it turned out they just, triangulated information from like Crunchbase or wherever, or like random stories. So what did they say? What is reality? Let's just get it out there, because the company's actually doing really well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you calling that out. I actually don't know exactly where this person who posted this original tweet got their data. I assume from Crunchbase, since they work at CB Insights. But they had referenced, Airtable's at like 150 million in revenue now, I think they said, and it's only been growing like low double digits. Like I think they quoted 14% or something over the past 3 years. So basically like almost no growth. And like it might have to raise more money, and like what is the state of the business, right? Like, and like, again, I actually don't fault this person. Like, maybe they were just trying to
what? It was the CB Insights guy. The CB Insights is, I don't know exactly what their business is, but they're some sort of data provider. I think like maybe they compete with Crunchbase. And so their premise was, you're like this, example of like, if you take the public market comps of like Monday and Asana, they're trading at 6 times revenue, 12 times. You're a private company, and you had like a very high private market valuation at some point, and that the bottom line was that your valuation was probably somewhere between $1 billion and $2 billion, and that's like whatever, 90% from the private market, $11 billion value.
Right.
I got it now in front of me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think their specific point was like, well, Airtable has raised almost that amount of money, right? Like we've raised 1.4 billion in total capital. So what if Airtable's not even worth the money they've raised, right? Which, it was a very speculative post. And, again, don't fault this person. I think they were probably trying to, one, get some buzz and a conversation started with something probably intentionally a little bit more sensational, but also there's limited data out there or a lack thereof. And, I think it was speculative by definition to kind of fill in that vacuum and maybe, again, just kind of solicit a conversation to get going. That being said, we actually had already gotten to 150 million in ARR by the time we closed our Series F, which was our last round. It was obviously during the peak.
The 2021 era, the peak zero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we can infer at a 30% growth rate or even with headwinds, 20%, whatever it is.
And frankly, we've grown at much higher than 30%.
Okay, great.
Since that time, right? So, even the overall business, and by the way, our enterprise business, which, as we talk more about the product and where we're going, that's been the part that we focus more on. But even the overall business has grown at high double-digit percents for each of the last 2 fiscal years. Like even this year, which we're obviously closing out, the second half of, we've still continued to grow at a healthy pace. That we have seen, some tighter budget cycles, et cetera, some tougher, kind of sales cycles, but still growing at a very healthy rate. And also, by the way, we're profitable now as a business. So,
oh wow, you're profitable.
We're actually generating cash flow, and we still have the vast majority of our funding raised in the bank. So we have over 900 million of capital in the bank.
Wow.
And obviously now we add to it. So the specific.
So let me ask you a question about that. You felt the pressure in the market to switch from high growth to, growth, let's say from absurd growth to high growth with profits. Even with 900 million in the bank, that seems like maybe an overreaction. So how do you make that decision as a CEO? Hey, we got to get profitable. When you're sitting on 900 million, would it kill you to lose 100 million a year for the next 9 or 150? Or were you just trying to be ultra conservative? And then how do you deal with these late stage investors and the pressure of well, why aren't we putting this money to work? We gave you the money. We gave it to you grow. How do you manage all that?
Yeah, well, first off, I feel very fortunate to have, all of our investors really understand and be supportive of us building the best company we can for the long term. Meaning I've never felt from any of our investors at any, round, creating pressure on us to do something that's perverse to what we actually believe is going to be the best outcome for the overall business long term. No short-term pressures, et cetera. What we're really trying to do is build a high quality business. And it turns out, I think in an era when there was very cheap capital, it makes sense to go and try to deploy that capital in the pursuit of both experimental initiatives, both product wise and go to market, and also just rationally where the return on the dollar is lower, right? When literally the, risk-free interest rate is next to nil, it's rational to try to deploy your own capital.
If people are offering you money at 0% essentially, and you're getting minor dilution, of course you're going to go for the gold. That makes sense. But the game changed on the field.
The game changed.
If you've ever had to hire developers, it is a giant headache. Are they built for the startup grind? How do you know? If you hire the wrong developer, man, maybe they're going to drag your whole team down. Maybe they take you down some rabbit hole and you don't know what's going on. And then not only are you back to square one, you might be behind the 8 ball, right? But if you hire the right developer, that could be a game changer. Let me introduce you to Lemon Hire. It's a platform that helps you find qualified senior developers who want to join your team. Lemon Hire pre-selects vets and matches tech candidates with high growth startups so founders can focus on building their vision. Here's why you can trust Lemon Hire. They got 80,000 pre-vetted engineers, and you can interview any of them within 48 hours notice. You pay nothing until you've started onboarding. Lemon Hire is going to replace any of your hires for free in the first 30 days. So just go to lemon.io/hire, HIRE, to get a special offer just for Twist listeners, $2,000 off your first hire. That's right, $2,000 off at lemon.io/hire, LEMON.io/hire. Hire with confidence at lemon.io/hire. How long did it take you to shift those gears? And what was that process like? How many
It's
board
not-
meetings? How many quarters?
I would say, it's not so simple as just we got to go profitable, although that's one obvious like kind of milestone that we crossed. It takes much more of a surgical understanding of, what are the growth levers of the business? And truth be told, I think, Airtable for sure, but probably a lot of other companies that, I know of like out there don't have as good of an understanding of their growth levers as, we hoped or thought we did, right? Meaning like if you're, a company that's super optimized, like Salesforce at some point got to the point where they could predictably add, another rep to the system, get this much productivity out like clockwork. And they just could know, we can scale it up at this rate, right? And I think for a lot of other businesses, especially those that came from PLG, and especially for us where it's organic PLG, we weren't even paying performance marketing dollars to get our top of funnel. Like top of funnel just compounded over time. And obviously now we've added on this enterprise sales layer to our business. It's actually murkier, like how much incremental return are you going to get if you like add more people, if you invest more into the business, right? It's not as predictable as we would have liked. So I think, a lot of what we did was spent the past, call it year, even year and a half, really trying to surgically understand, how the business worked, right? And that meant for me going out and not only talking to other operators, some of whom are great, advisors or friends to the company, people who have run companies, or operated at scale like ServiceNow or Salesforce or many other kind of SaaS companies, for me to go internally within the business and like spend time both on the ground level with customers, et cetera, and kind of really understand like when things are working well, like when we do really well with a customer and we're expanding and growing those dollars, like what's actually happening and what are the pieces of that we can recreate more consistently. So I think it takes both an outward, an externally informed approach. And certainly your board and investors can help with that. We have some great ones who have like really good perspective, but also like this very internal oriented approach where you go and really understand like what's working within our customer base, within our org. And really it's about like, one, just getting to a healthy size as a business that, candidly is like the right scale and the right structure for our type of business and our scale. And I think, again, like the cheap capital, in many ways, it allowed you to kind of go and grow ahead of the curve, right? Like
how far out were you hiring? Because this is something we talk a lot about on All In, we talk about it here. That seemed to me that, the big tech companies were hiring 2 to 3 years out in terms of like, let's get staff in here for literally 2 years from now. We'll get them, because we're in this crazy competition. And then, I'd say the large pre-public companies like yours, maybe you're a year ahead of, you're trying to hire a year ahead of plan or something to that at the peak?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that I don't even think about it in that way anymore because you could say like for our revenue scale or for the revenue scale we're going to be at in a year, what is like the typical SaaS comp, like the SaaS benchmark headcount of sales and marketing and product dollars. You could do that analysis, but I think it's kind of the wrong way to think about it because if you're really tight on understanding the incremental impact of every hire you make in any of those categories, product, marketing, sales, headcount or dollars, then you don't have to just pull forward all of those hires in one big mass, right? I mean, it's easier to go and hire aggressively ahead and just try a bunch of stuff. And, frankly, I take accountability for kind of trying that, kind of a little bit messier approach of let's just go and like staff up and see what
Often
works.
calls it blitzscaling, right? It's like
exactly.
Uber did it, Travis did it, like
for sure.
It is a known strategy to get to scale. You had, I think, 1,200, 1,300 people at the peak. You did 2 rounds of layoffs.
Yeah.
I think you cut 500 people or so.
Now. Yeah. But now,
650. Wow. So half the amount of people.
Yeah. And that's tough, right? It's brutal. It's really tough emotionally.
Totally hard.
For like everyone in the room, like I feel, there were days where like I felt horrible. Imagine having to like, go through that. And obviously like, I'm not even the one who really has to bear the brunt of these changes. But at the same time, I think, the lesson learned is blitzscaling I think makes a lot of sense. And I have a lot of respect for the concept and Reed coining it.
Sure.
I think it makes a lot of sense in certain domains. So certain businesses are truly a winner takes all. Like if you're Uber,
Airbnb,
if you don't get in
Uber,
there, other, Lyft or some other competitor, whether it's this market or a different one, is going to come in
Grab,
there, right? And it's literally who can get there first, right? Like the only advantage you're going to have is in building bigger network effects, getting better economies of scale, et cetera. And especially so when you have a business where the unit economics get better with scale. And so it's almost like you can't even build the profitable version of this business without getting to scale, right? SaaS economics are obviously very, very different. And I would argue in most cases, if a SaaS company, especially after you get to like 100, 200 million of revenue scale, like if you can't make the economic model work or start like being very clearly on the path to making it work really well, throwing a bunch of fuel on the fire is not always going to help you. Now, it might in some cases where, there are some light, kind of economies of scale, like R&D dollars. Obviously, you invest in the software product once, you get to sell it as many times as you like. But I just think it works differently in SaaS. And also, these are very rarely as commoditized, hyper competitive markets as the on-demand economy, companies that require blitzscaling, right? So
describe
like even with Airtable,
Well, I was going to say, describe the feeling, the vibes, as the kids say, but just a general feeling of going from, hey, we're in blitzscale mode, we're adding tons of people.
Yeah.
And I would suspect a little bit chaotic, but like, like sort of this, like blitzscaling would be. And then, oh my God, we're profitable, we're efficient, we're safe and secure in this crazy maelstrom that is, this, what was definitely a recession and is a recession for our industry, even though there's weird stuff going on, like GDP is growing at like a really incredible number.
It's a very bizarre,
it's the craziest recession I've ever been through because we're having a crazy recession. Travel's going into a recession. It's almost, I call it the rolling recession, where it's like every industry gets like 3 or 4 quarters of down market, crash and or correction and or recession. So just the vibes, like how did it change from one to the other? And does the company run more efficiently and feel stronger now?
Yeah. Well, look, I think we're in the early days of building what I would call like the scaffolding for a really lean and focused business, right? And we've been trying to build, that scaffolding in kind of phases over the past even couple of years. The riff is just part of that. Like the actually getting leaner, getting smaller is part of that. But I think there's a lot of other parts of it, like, having a really good operating framework for the business. Like, how do we create accountability? One thing we did with our product org, which is really exciting to me and I think to a lot of the folks in our company, is like we're actually aligning our major product pillars. Like these are the groups that the major surface areas of the product organization. We're really aligning them around different segments of the business with real revenue dollars attached to each of them, right? So no longer is it just like hey, we build awesome features, functionality, and then eventually it gets sold and marketed somehow.
Give an example like of that.
So
how
like
you do
concretely, it. We have like 3 major pillars, and one of them is around self-serve revenue, and it's basically called the teams pillar, and we're orienting around like the self-serve product experience. So we always want to have this amazing, kind of top of funnel experience. Anyone can hear about Airtable, come in, sign up organically, and get a really good onboarding experience, right? And even build an app of their own, share it, whether they're, a small team within a big company, or they could be, a small company in and of themselves. But we want to make that experience as effortless as possible. And that's actually going to feed in not only to our self-serve revenue base, which, by the way, as a separate, like even by its own, would be $100 million business and still continues to grow hyper efficiently, right? Because that doesn't require much human touch at all. Or it's going to contribute by feeding in, becoming the seeds of adoption within large enterprises that eventually we can put a human touch on and turn into one of our many, $1 million accounts, right? So like that's one pillar, and it's accountable to real revenue outcomes, especially on the self-serve side. So there's this like feeling of like, wow, like, now the product folks and the R&D folks can really feel like they own revenue, right? And like I personally think like there's just something really palpable and exciting about like thinking as a business owner, like a GM, rather than just, okay, I build this functionality, this feature, launch it. That's kind of it, right? So that's one of the 3 pillars. Won't go into all 3, but
but it's nice like when the people who are in the kitchen who are making this incredible dish can bring it out, land 100%. The dish, on the table and see the customer's reaction to it.
Totally.
And for a long time, the chefs, and the kitchen staff in the front of the house is two separate experiences.
Yeah.
And when they kind of get blended and you can kind of connect those things, it makes it more fun,
I completely agree.
When you're a founder, you need to be able to do every job, but you can't be an expert in everything all at once. And one of the hardest things to scale is customer support. So here's your solution. InTouchCX will help you to create a custom support strategy designed around your unique challenges, all powered by AI and automation. InTouchCX provides automated solutions in voice, email, and chat support to enhance customer experience. Again, the experts at InTouchCX will design a customer experience strategy tailored to your brand and your goals. When you use InTouchCX to automate repetitive tasks, you'll deliver faster customer support resolutions and you'll boost customer satisfaction. Ready to ignite your startup growth? Well, book a free consultation with an automation expert at intouchcx.com/twist. That's intouchcx.com/twist.
To build on that metaphor, it's almost like if the chefs are actually coming out and seeing like the look on the customer's face, and even like seeing which orders they read, like which items the customer comes back and keeps repeating an order for, then you can actually tailor your recipes around that, right? Like you actually start just developing different menu items, and like the way you prepare it caters to that end customer experience, right? So you get the like whole feedback loop going, where I think in truth, like one of the challenges of hyperscaling is it's really hard to keep that tightness of the whole feedback loop, right? Like it's the opposite of the lean startup manifesto or methodology, where like you really want like everyone in the room working on the company to understand deeply what the customer actually cares about, what they're willing to pay for. And if you're adding, like a ton of people and you're growing every function kind of at this blitzscaling speed, I think you end up getting, like almost by necessity, disintermediated from that feedback loop.
You cut the company down almost by half. Your clients were doing that at the same time. So you charge on a per seat basis.
For sure.
And so here's a clip. I'm taking you back in time, an unexpected clip. They just pulled this live. Here's a clip of you and I 5 years ago and me asking you about pricing. So $120 a year, $240 a year for a user. If I'm an enterprise and I got 10 people in my company, do I pay more or less?
So you pay more.
Why do I have to pay more?
So you get more of everything. So you get, kind of expanded usage limits. You get a lot of administrative control. So certainly things like SSO. And you also get,
When you say that SSO, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So SSO is basically where we allow you to use your own authentication system to allow users at your company to use Airtable.
So I don't have to create a whole bunch of new accounts.
Exactly.
I just have the single sign-on, boom.
Right, and you can provision, deprovision those users whenever you want.
So I get all those tools, and that would cost what, $30 in the enterprise a month?
It's more. So it
$40
starts at $60 per user per month.
720 a year?
Yeah, so we actually
Marron, this is expensive. No wonder everybody wanted to invest in this company. And I missed it.
I mean, I think...
God, what was that Series A like? That must have been like a $10, $15 million round?
So we raised actually a little bit less than that. It was around $8 million.
Oh my God. And you just raised 52?
Correct, yeah.
52 million.
Yep,
and that was probably for no more than 20% of the company. So that means a $250 million post.
We're not coming on the...
But I'm in the ballpark.
But sure, yeah.
Because I'm in the ball. It could be 10% of the company. Who knows? Oh my Lord. Wow. I mean, it's just incredible.
You dress more like me now and I dress more like myself.
Yeah, exactly. I used to put the suit on and try to be respectful for CEOs, but you just think about that, like, gosh, what a moment in time, huh? Like, that was really, if you think about ZERP and you think about the inflection point, that was 2018, you did your Series B. Just look at that crazy like jump in valuations. You had, you said the Series A was like 12 million or something, and then boom.
15s. Yeah.
That was the ZERP. That was the start of the peak.
That B round for us was before our unicorn round, obviously, which happened later in the year, and obviously we grew as well as a business during that time and since that time. But yeah, it was like I remember when we got to get the unicorn status, which was never something I like cared for innately, but just symbolized like one step along the way. Like there weren't that many unicorns out there, right? I mean, they're like. Especially in SaaS. I mean, there were a bunch.
No, in SaaS it was dozens.
Like yeah,
and consumer and everything, it was low hundreds. It might have been like 200 at that time or something, not 2,000. And I think people extrapolated and suspended disbelief on a lot of companies in terms of product market fit.
For sure.
And maybe it wasn't there. And that was the big mistake in the entire industry. But you had product market fit.
Yeah.
How did you know that this was peaking out? Did you have some crazy moment where you knew it was peaking out, where people were like just offering you sick amounts of money without doing diligence, or like showing up at your house with donuts trying to get you to take a term sheet?
I never had that experience. I will say one very, very, big time investor. I think this was more tongue in cheek than serious, but offered a multi-$100 million round on the spot. As I was pitching them. Again, who knows if it would have come through? We didn't in the room. We didn't take the round. I don't even know if it would have been a real hard offer, but I think we always took a much more methodical approach to finding investors. So we never really got to experience the full, the full on wildness of the funding environment. I wish I had stories of investors throwing term sheets. Our face,
getting offered a couple $100 million in the room during the presentation.
Yeah.
That is peak. Usually you think, hey, you got to meet my next set of partners. You got to do diligence. Let me talk to a couple of customers. That should be a 30-day process, not a 30-minute process, right?
For sure.
However many minutes into the room meeting you were. But listen, you had an incredibly strong company. Back to the product, because I'm fascinated by the product and a product trend I'm seeing. Yeah. There were verticalized apps and there were developers. And for example, we needed to do 2 products recently in the last year. One of them was we wanted to have, speaking of investors, when our startups, we invest in $150 a year now. So it's when I met with you, it was we're investing in 2 a month. So 24 a year. Now we're at 150. Yeah. And, we have all these founders together and we wanted to build a way, 2 different things. One, a demo day kind of handshake thing where everybody who's an angel investor coming to the dim sum demo day, I hosted at a dim sum restaurant because everybody loves dim sum. We would send them a link. Hey, pick the companies you like. Click here to request a meeting. Click here to request to join the thing. And I was like, okay, we can hire a developer to do that. And they're like, oh, we built it already. I'm like, how'd you build it? Airtable. I'm like, awesome. Okay, great. And that's supposed to cost me. I was prepared to pay 25 or 50K to a developer to do that. No developer. There's people today who are good at scripting and using these tools and the views and Zapier and if this, then that, or whatever they use as glue to get it dialed in. And then the second one was we wanted to build an investor intelligence database. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, SurveyMonkey, Typeform, they start doing the forms where I'm like, well, you need a presentation level for this. Yeah. And so they start using Airtable. But then there's Coda we use a lot too. Yeah. And then Notion. And so Notion kind of documents going into database, Coda kind of database with some documents. You're like Excel with database. And the thing I love about this trend is one, we can prototype software and it just works. And it's not like no code and it's not developing. So we can kind of go faster. And I can have the product leads. It's only a certain type of business person who can do this. But if I can get them to learn how to do this, and some people do it natively, about 20% now of, I think, either young or highly technical people can do it. Man, it's so powerful when the business leader can build the system and just take a week to do it. Man, you don't have to hire a developer and then have them disappear and everything like that. So maybe you could speak to how people are using this and if my use case is kind of indicative of why this is so addicting and why, for me with a 20-person company, I don't know what we're spending on Airtable, nor do I care. Because I'm sure it's low thousands. It sounds like
we should charge you $25,000 to $50,000.
Wow,
$49,999.
I think we're paying low thousands because I probably have 20 people on it or whatever it is. So 20 people, $30-$40 a month, whatever we're paying, it's probably like under 10K.
Yeah,
it's a really great deal for both parties. I feel like
for sure. Yeah, I think what's happening, and I love that you called out. To be honest, it's not like every single person in your company or even outside your company. I'm sure your company tends to skew much more tech savvy than most 20% companies out there.
Corporate America.
But it's not like every person is coming in and building very elaborate apps on Airtable all the time, right? And I think what's actually happening with this genre of product is it almost abstracts away the technical bits of building a useful business app, right? So, if you literally wanted to develop it with code, you'd have to know all the best practices of front-end engineering and back-end engineering and get the auth right and just do all of these different bits and pieces just to be able to then work on the part that actually captures what I would call like the business data layer and the business logic, right? So in the case of, let's say the like matching the alums or the company, founders, like, or the fundraising apps, like there's a know-how around the business, part of things, right? Like, what do you want to happen from a business standpoint? What's the behavior you want? What's the rules? Like, what are the best practices that you want to codify into the software? Like, in traditional software development, you have to go through all the technical bits that have nothing to do with that, just to get to the point where you can express that part. So really what's happening is that we're trying to abstract away, and I think a lot of these other products are trying to abstract away a lot of that technical complexity and make it, it's almost like how you build a website with Wix versus with HTML, right? Like HTML has nothing to do with your business. It's like a very rote language. You gotta muck through some technical stuff to build the thing you want. Whereas Wix just lets you go and design it yourself, right? So
in our case, Squarespace, but both of those are like exceptional products at that. And it's a perfect analogy. I don't have to get in there, and do that. And just the same with forms. Like you used to have to fire up a database server, fire up some HTML on the front end, and then you have like something like Typeform or SurveyMonkey, just super elegant. Starting a business used to be a real pain in the neck. You needed to pay lawyers, tons of hidden fees. It was a mess. We all know that, but not anymore. You need to check out Northwest Registered Agent. They're going to help you form your company really fast, then get you the docs you need to open a business bank account. They're also going to provide you with mail scanning, which is amazing, and give you a business address to keep your personal privacy intact. Northwest can form LLCs, corporations, or nonprofits. And they're also going to equip you with a registered service agent, an operating agreement or bylaws, membership or stockholder certificates, a resolution to open a bank account, and it's all privacy by default. You'll also get lifetime support from their corporate guides. So here's your call to action. Northwest provides everything you need to start and maintain your business. And they're giving Twist listeners a 60% discount. For just $39 plus state fees, they'll form your LLC, corporation, or nonprofit. Visit northwestregisteredagent.com/twist. Once again, northwestregisteredagent.com/twist. So let's go over to AI.
Yeah.
You must be obsessed with this. I'm getting crazy obsessed with it. I made everybody in the company use ChatGPT-4 and Bard and everything. When they have some sort of an issue or a question, I'm like, share with me, because now you can share the threads, the chat thing. Share the thread with me where you asked ChatGPT, like, oh, I didn't.
Right.
They smack their head.
Or let me Google that for you.
Yeah. It's literally like, let me Google that for you, the website. And I'm like, let me ChatGPT that for you. And had an incredible experience the other day. We were looking at an equestrian company to invest in. And they're like, we have questions about the TAM. I'm like, and I just like write my thing. You're an investor at a venture firm. You're considering an investment in an equestrian company. Please give me all the data you can in a table with citations of the total addressable market and subsections and categories of this. And like, I put it into Claude, ChatGPT, and Bard, and my Lord, the amount of incredible information. And I was like, we could have hired an expert in equestrian or spent 30 hours of research and not gotten something this
hired
good.
McKinsey to go and do like a $1 million project on this.
Exactly. It's literally like, what is McKinsey going to do with this? Like, and this is year one of the technology. We're about to hit the 1 year anniversary. So that's just from my world, like a small thing. What are you doing as CEO? What are you playing with? What are you seeing internally as you run your organization? And then what are people looking for in the product? And how do you think about the roadmap? So internal to external.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree. I think this is like pretty profound stuff. Now, I do think we're also at this point where there's a lot of hype, right? I think we're in like maybe close to peak hype. And while these models, especially, I'm more excited personally about the LLMs as opposed to like image generation or other domains, but, or at least LLMs that have multimodal capabilities. So it can reason and perform, tasks like what you just described, like size me this TAM or write me up like a product description for this new concept I'm toying around with or whatever. It's more of the reasoning skills that are interesting to me than just like purely like, something much more visual or audio, for instance, like the music generation. But I think to me, what's exciting is that like this is like the iPhone 1, right? It's like clearly going to be a game changer. It's got some roughness around the edges. It's not like it can't replace everything all overnight. And I think the problem is like, I just hope that the hype doesn't get so big, whether it's on the investment side and funding a bunch of, companies that are doing AI stuff, or, probably, or on the customer side where like, customers are pitched a bunch of stuff that doesn't actually work well enough today to serve the purpose, that there's this like massive trough of disillusionment that like we have to dig ourselves out of, right? Because that would be my fear, is that this is really a potent technology. There are clearly ways that it's going to, be applicable today, but more so as it just gets better and better. Like, and even comparing GPT-4 to 3, right? The difference between those two, even though like they're both large language models with like many billions of parameters and trained on like really, really large data sets of text, GPT-4 can pass the bar with human-like accuracy. GPT-3 could not, even though GPT-3 is pretty good still. So I think we're just getting closer and closer to the point where you can actually get these breakthrough applications. The way we think about it with Airtable is we're not at, and probably won't be personally, I don't think we're going to be at, in the very near future, maybe not even in like 5 years, a point where AI is so good at everything that it just replaces all human interaction, intuition, et cetera, in software, right? No. Like you just completely cut out the human in product development and generating marketing campaigns, et cetera. It's all, completely run turnkey by AI. I don't think we're at that point. I don't think we're going to get to that anytime soon. I do think we're at a point where if humans are very much in the loop and can use AI in a very specific way, right? And they can tailor how the AI is used that is predictable and very tailored, then you can get really interesting applications overnight. Like tomorrow, you can start unlocking these use cases. So like the whole premise of Airtable is that we create this app platform that is really easy to build on. And so, by virtue of that, we think we can give you AI pieces to put into that platform. AI Field is our first example.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really cool idea. Explain it.
Yeah. And it's like, if Airtable's a Lego kit, like now we give you AI pieces to build in that Lego kit, but it's really still about what you're building with those Legos, right? So if you want to build a way to do your product roadmap better, but now with AI, you can choose exactly what prompt and what data feeds into that prompt and, kind of how you output the result. Maybe it's to customer or to triage customer feedback, right? Into your product roadmap, or maybe it's to generate product ideas or, a PRD for a feature that is in development. But you can choose exactly how to feed that into that workflow. In the context of your own data with our, kind of Lego pieces. So that's our approach.
Yeah, you're right. Mouse click on, hey, this is customer feedback. Anytime customer feedback comes in, say it in bullet points as short as possible, and then put it into a category so you can tag it, et cetera. I noticed tagging. I'm working on a project on inside.com and like just tagging of news stories or tagging of blog posts. It's kind of figured that out better than humans can do it. Like it knows the who, what, when, where, why in a document. So if you say like, tell me the names of people and tell me the locations in this field of data, it kind of does that perfect.
For sure.
And that's just, if you think about data normalization and trying to make sense of data and feedback from users, man, that's amazing. And you say, let's give me the top 2 points each piece of customer feedback is, and then look at this body of feedback and write a daily summary of it. Wow, that stuff is crazy.
I think the range of it is what's so powerful, right? Like when you talked about like, doing TAM sizing, that's like very high grade stuff, right? Like, like strategy consulting level stuff. But the fact that you can also have it do very rote work. And by the way, like, in either case, even if you're using the most advanced model, like Claude 2 100K token or GPT-4 32K token or whatever the next best version is going to be, it's expensive relative to the cheaper, smaller models. We're talking like cents per query, right? For something that like
ridiculous. Yeah, it's like a billionaire. It's like a millionaire, like going into Starbucks. Like there's no amount of damage Starbucks can do. Totally. You could just order whatever you want and leave half of it behind. You're gonna be okay. Yeah. Like the bills on these things is like laughable. Are you upselling people on the AI, or are you just eating the cost and putting it in flat rate? How do you think about that?
We're still, we haven't officially launched the paid, full GA version of our AI capabilities, and we're building out more features to that leverage AI. So in addition to AI Field, we're building something that allows you to ask questions of your data, like pretty much what you would expect, right? So if you have a CRM in Airtable, or your companies you've invested in, you can ask questions like, hey, what was that company I invested in that does this? Or, list off all the companies that I've invested in this category or whatever it may be, right? We're doing more stuff with AI, and then we want to package it all and both offer it as kind of an AI bundle and TBD as to what that pricing will be. But, we think of it similar to how Microsoft is thinking about Copilot for Office, where it's going to be a lot of enhancements that just make the product so much better that it's worthy of like a significant add-on fee, right? It actually
that's exciting for SaaS companies, because if everybody's going to do more with less, right? You're doing your company has tripled in size. I'm going to guess doubled or tripled in size since you went half in terms of the staff size ballpark. I'm in the ballpark again. Something like that. You doubled or tripled.
We just did our most recent riff like a couple months ago, but we've continued growing. We've definitely gotten much larger in scale than at the time like we priced our last round. And
your customers are coming to you. Like obviously Elon at Twitter went down 85%. He's releasing more product in the past year than I can remember in the last 5 years of Twitter releasing product. So people are learning to do more with less. So then it makes sense that if everybody's becoming like, I don't know, like a demigod or a god, like everybody's the 10X programmer who has a job. Well, then if their tool's a little more expensive, if their sword or their bow and arrow is a little more expensive, like, okay, that's worth it because like if a 10X programmer wants a $5,000 laptop instead of a $3,000 one, you just get it to them.
For sure.
And so that's kind of exciting. If people are paying $600 or $700, maybe they pay $1,200. Who cares about the incremental $500? The seat-based pricing, which has been, everybody's, cutting the number of seats as people tighten up their organizations, and everybody's doing that all at once, which is really weird. But then people spend more, right? If you can spend more, so I don't mind like getting people a more powerful computer or spending twice as much on a SaaS product if it makes those people that much more effective at work. If that makes sense.
For sure. No, 100%. And I also think the seat count reduction or just like headcount reduction is probably a little bit more hyperbolized than it actually exists. Like we've at least there are certain sectors, really small businesses or like, high growth tech in particular obviously has seen a major hiring slowdown or even like contraction in headcounts. But a lot of other industries, like we're not really seeing as dramatic an impact, right? So with our customer base, like we're still continuing to expand. Like in most of our customers, like
they didn't overexpand. They didn't overhire like we did. So they weren't going. They weren't doing the blitzscaling.
Totally. They were kind of. They paced it slow more evenly throughout, right? The whole time. But I also think to your point, like. If you can really increase productivity of each person by a dramatic amount, then, one, you can definitely charge more for it, right? And that can counter, like, if you can get, a real 50% plus increase in the average revenue per user through these capabilities, like, that's a pretty significant, jump up, right? And that would be our aim is to get like a sizable jump up, not like something more incremental. But second of all, arguably, the companies have more reason to hire people who are more productive, right? Like as something, as the ROI on hiring an extra person goes up, not down. Like I actually think there's a world where at least in some functions in some industries, you hire more like developers, for instance, if they're more productive with AI Copilot than not, right? And I would venture to say, like, I think the same will be true for even non-developers in other, areas like PMs, marketers, et cetera.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in terms of the economy and jobs specifically. We're still at like record low unemployment for our lifetimes the past 50 years. And there's still 1.6 or 7 jobs for every person who wants to get a job. Unemployment participation actually ticked up a little bit. So I think we peaked at 69, 70%, back in the like late 90s, early 2000s. And now we were at like 60, 61, and now it's back up to 62, 63% of able-bodied folks in the United States who are looking for a job taking it. So I think in this down market, you'll see more people maybe come back to the workforce, which is great.
Yeah.
But then there's going to be whole swaths of jobs that are removed. But, it's so inspiring, this new technology, that I think it's going to make people want to solve more problems in the world. And the world's got an infinite number, I believe, the world's got like an infinite number of problems to solve. So what I'm seeing is all the freezing of hiring in big tech is resulting in more startups. I'm seeing many more 2-3 person startups, and they feel like they're as productive as the 10-person startups just 5 years earlier because they're all using AI up and down the entire stack.
For sure.
So I'm super excited about where this all heads. Are you excited about AI? Are you concerned about job destruction? And we had this executive order come out, and everybody's going to have to submit their paperwork. And I don't know, somebody in the Biden administration is going to like tell them if they are allowed to do stuff. And it's a little bit, feels like a little regulatory capture. Shout out Bill Gurley. Well, what are your thoughts? I don't know if you saw this stuff, but what are your thoughts on, the best this could be or how bad it could be?
For sure. I mean, look, I think near term, I'm very excited, both because, it's just cool to see, and play with directly some of the stuff that you can do, whether it's with Midjourney or ChatGPT or so on. Like, we can all touch and feel it, and like, it's exciting, right? Some of the stuff is like actually pretty mind blowing. And obviously for us as a business, like, I think there are some pretty obvious ways that we can take advantage of it and help our customers gain value from it. We can be that conduit. I would say long term, as in like 10 plus years out, I'm pretty worried, but there's just so many unknowns from here to there. Like, obviously a lot of the conversation is around like, what if we, create super intelligence and like all of the AI safety features, and can you even build AI safety with, with a super intelligence that thinks far beyond or in a different way than we can? I mean, that stuff is like truly mind blowing and like really, really like unnerving when you think like deeply about it. I can't, claim to know like I'm anywhere near an expert on.
I mean,
on
it's just
topic.
You're getting into science fiction, like
for sure. I mean, literally science fiction.
What happens when AGI kind of starts thinking about, how could I make myself smarter? Yeah. And I mean, the chip companies are now using AI to optimize the design of AI chips.
Right.
And so if that's any indication of like how this thing could spiral out of control or in a wonderful way, I mean, we could see like the concepts of Moore's law or chip design. They're going to figure some things out that were orthogonal thinking, things that humans just couldn't get to. And it's going to find all these nooks and crannies of efficiency that, maybe we stumble upon every decade or two.
For sure.
And it's just going to find them and be like, oh, by the way, dummies, here's 6 more things you could have been doing
like
this whole time.
Here's a completely new way to fabricate processors hyper efficiently and with much higher performance. We can get like a smaller nanometer process. Here's like how to do
less heat. It's going to be wild. I mean, it's going to be wild when that starts happening. And then like this whole generation that's worked from home, they're really like tweaked out about like commuting. There was this whole viral brouhaha on Twitter of somebody freaked out that they had to commute and they had to leave their house at 7:30 and come home at 6:15. And I dunked on the woman a little bit. Like, oh my God, the humanity. But I was thinking about it. You know what? Like Henry Ford put everything at a 5-day work week from a 6-day. China and I think it was Japan at some point, people were working too hard, and Japan started putting up posters in the, I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s, like take some recreation time, leave work early to go play tennis. Like they were trying to promote people to have more social lives.
Yeah.
I think we might get to the point with this AI in 5 or 10 years that bosses like me are like, you know what? Everybody's doing so great. Company's thriving. We're going to move to a 4-day work week. I know people are like cheering right now, like, oh my God, Jake Halcyon. But I mean, if things did get that good and you could get your job done in 6 hours a day, or you could do it in 4 days a week, like maybe that's where the world winds up. Maybe the great bargain is going to be, come back to the office, but 3 days a week and work 1 day from home or something. What are you seeing in terms of people's work ethic and how that might change, and then work from home? I'm curious as we wrap here.
Personally, I love the idea of work smarter, not harder. And I think, going back to the topic of like, who are the people who go out and build systems, build apps, right? Like, instead of going and trying to like, match, companies by hand and do it a very manual way, like how do we automate this system? I think there's going to be more and more value for systems thinkers, people who, especially, with AI capabilities, figure out how to do something in a more automated way, still with some human intervention. But like, to your point, it's like 3 days a week, 4 days a week worth of human oversight and input versus like a full 5-day or 6-day plus. I'm doing every single little thing in this.
Yep.
The obvious example would be like, if you're trying to generate marketing content, obviously a lot of the actual writing itself of words. Writers, often got and still get paid on a per word basis. Yep. But I think obviously AI can help with some aspects of the writing. I don't think, it's ever going to be a replacement for like human crafted or human edited writing. But, how much more leverage can you get with the
leverage is big. I can tell you, like in every organization I've ever been in, and I'm a former journalist and editor, there were always people who are great at editing, proofreading, fact-checking, sentence structure, leads, style things. And you should just run around the organization. Okay, who's my style guy? Okay, who's my fact-checking person? Oh, who's my, grammar, like lunatic? And now you use Grammarly, another shout out to another amazing SaaS product. And like, it just gets everything right. And then you can highlight stuff in Grammarly. And I think Notion has a similar product. So now like I'm using Notion and Grammarly. But you just highlight something, you're like, make this better was like the prompt in terms of writing. Just highlight it and make it better. And somebody had written something, and most people are not natural writers. They forget what they learned in school, or they never had a good teacher. Now you can just write something that's really sloppy and choppy, highlight it, and say, make it better. And it literally goes from like a 6 to an 8.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a 9. And I'm like, well, that was a lot of what I did as an editor. A lot of what I do now in terms of helping people. I feel like the AI has replaced 80% of my proofing with people, maybe 90.
Yeah.
Maybe 90%. And then the part that's left is like, what are we trying to communicate here?
Yeah.
And that's super exciting to me. If everybody could be an 8 out of a 10 as a writer, as opposed to 4 to 7,
right?
Man, that would be freaking fantastic.
And then we just focus to your point on like, what is the actual essence of the thing that is different or matters here, right? That's super exciting, whether it's a product or, like writing content or, you're designing some kind of new, concept. Like it's all about like, what is the like essence of the thing?
Yes.
And I think that's exciting to imagine a world where like more of us, we all spend more time on that. Cause I like, that's the fun part of the job.
Exactly. I mean, Sachs was saying his biggest challenge as a writer, and he's a good writer, he's obviously a great thinker, which is starting from a blank page. And he said now, like, because it builds the bones of the framework for him and he could fill it in really quick, that kind of plays to his strength because he didn't have the ability to like, do I start? Which was kind of like my strength. Like, I know exactly where to start. Like, I know how to capture that first paragraph. I know the ending. And then I'm just like, okay, how do we get from point A to point B? There's going to be a couple of twists and turns in here. I got all my little toolkits, and now it's like, well, you know what? I can do all that. It's freaking fantastic. So
fill in the blanks.
Exactly. All right, listen, continued success. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're super busy. If you don't use Airtable, it rocks. I mean, your organization is going to be like 10 times more efficient, and it's getting more efficient. Just give it a shot. There's like a bunch of templates, and all these lunatics make amazing templates. So if you're doing your fundraising or a cap table or OKRs or project management or CRM, you can just start whipping stuff up. And it's kind of an addiction for some people. If you get addicted, don't blame me. But it's a great product. It's super affordable. Airtable.com. Listen, Howie, great to see you. Let's do it again in 5 years.
Good to see you. Yeah, this was fun.
All right, man. Talk to you soon, brother. Cheers.
Awesome. Good to see you.